Hey, g'day people, it's Matt here from Matt Carve. So we're going to carve a beard today, and this is part of the series on how to carve a wood spirit. So this is sort of like what we're aiming for, a big long kind of beard, kind of flowing and all that kind of stuff. Now I've carved a lot of beards before, short ones, long ones, skinny ones, all sorts of beards. So I'm just going to give you some handy tips on how to carve a beard, and you can sort of manipulate those tips on the kind of beard you want to carve. Okay, so first things first, I am going to put the finished mustache there on the left for you to look at while we do the mustache all the way through, so you've got kind of an idea on where we're headed. So I tend to draw in the mustache and kind of what I kind of want for it to be, and I want the mustache to be really, really long. I don't know why, I just decided it would be. And you kind of want some sort of like nice flowing lines, and you can always sort of like have a look what other carvers have done and sort of like copy them. That's always a good way to start to learn. So, and what you want to do is sort of S-bends. You would have heard other carvers talk about this, sort of like make the bends sort of like flowing, and you can sort of see it in the on the left there, those flowing lines. So they're not coming just straight down, they're sort of like moving in different directions and sort of on different planes as well. So sort of don't think of just front on, it's sort of like back, it sort of like goes back into the carving and then comes back out again. So we've got the kind of mustache put in, and what we're going to do is we're going to take back the bulk of where the beard is, because that's just sticking too far out, as you can see there. And I'm using the Accessory flame burr for that. It sort of takes off the most wood. And this is macrocarpa. I think I've said that before. It's kind of like a little bit harder than basswood. So what we're doing there is we're slightly undercutting the mustache as well. Don't go too hard at that just at this stage, because you kind of maybe want to sort of like increase the size of the mustache. So sort of don't commit too much. And you can sort of see the mustache is actually quite flat on the surface. So what we want to do is we want to actually make it a little bit wavy on the surface as well. So what we're going to do is take out some scallops and sort of just make it flow like water. Okay, so we'll go back to the Accessory flame, and we'll just take some scallops out of the, when I say scallops, you know sort of what I mean, so like concaves out of the mustache. I was going to say convexes, no, but it's concaves, and kind of leave convexes, so you sort of get that wave motion happening. So it doesn't look much, but it really adds to the sculpture. It gives it sort of like a real dynamic kind of aspect to it. It doesn't really have any flat planes on it anywhere. Okay, so you can sort of see I have shaped the mustache kind of like the bulk. It's sort of like some wavy kind of forms there. You know, it's not like perfect or anything like that, perfect waves, but they go in and out and sort of like move in different ways. It's really sort of like you put in the, I guess, the general kind of shape of the mustache, and then we will go in and we will put in the valleys. What I'm doing with my thumbs right there is I'm just trying to work out how I'm going to put sort of like the beard in, and how much I'm going to take out sort of like bits down the bottom there. And I actually ended up using the bandsaw just to remove a couple of V's from the bottom, but you could use the cut saw as well, it's not a problem. Okay, so we are using the Dremel cutter burr, and you can see it's gold, and what that really means is it's supposed to be treated with something to give it max life. I'm not too sure about that, but they are quite expensive, but I tend to use them because they keep them in our hardware shop down the road, so I tend to buy one every once in a while, but I'll treat them quite well. What I tend to do is I won't use them on hardwoods too often, and if I do, it's only for detailing. Softer woods, they're not too bad because they're not going to blunt so easily on softer woods, so you can use them for a little bit more aggressive carving like I'm doing there. But what they're really, really good at is sort of doing those kind of lines in the mustache, really clean lines, which I have been doing, but I've sort of like been doing it in a way where I put the bulk in like that, and then I will go in with a diamond burr, which you're going to see me do very shortly, and sort of tidy up and manipulate the lines a little bit better and with a little bit more control. Okay, so I've got that kind of point in the beard sorted out, and it's sort of its general shape sorted out. I also sort of like want to sort of like point out too, because this was a flat on the bottom, the mustache and the beard are all on one plane, so we've really got to sort of make it a little bit more dynamic and sort of like I think we'll take the mustache up just a little bit. Okay, so now we have moved on to a diamond burr, and this is a inverted cone burr. I will leave the links to these. They're quite cheap, and you get like a pack of 12 or something like that. But they're quite cool because what they do is they kind of like imitating a V chisel, and it's sort of like leaving a nice kind of valley in there. So what I sometimes do is I do it one way, and then I'll flip over the carving, and I will also carve the other way, so the sort of like the V increases in diameter if you want that. So what I would suggest is I probably wouldn't go with these diamond burrs if I was carving hardwoods. These would be good for like cedar and basswood and this would make macrocarpa, maybe some pines, some softer pines as well. But if you're going to carve hardwood, I would probably stick to the cutter burrs and just sort of like smooth out the sort of like the lines that you made with a diamond burr. Maybe this one. So, and I like to go sort of like on that cheek part. You want to really get quite a lot of depth in there, and sort of like a real definition between the cheek and the beard. I think that looks quite cool. And so I'm just kind of like reacting to the lines that I'm putting in. So that will look quite wide, that little bit of wood there, so I'm putting a line down there, and as you can sort of see, it's not sort of moving smoothly through the wood, so sometimes I'll put in a valley and then I'll go back over a little bit lighter over the same sort of like groove, or maybe go from the other side and do it the other way. You kind of want your beard hairs, well, the valleys in between the hairs, to be quite smooth and dynamic. So sometimes you've got to sort of like go really lightly over and over to sort of like take out the initial bumps that may be there at the start of the first line that you make. And there's sort of like lots of ways you can carve a beard here, carving a beard, I should say. So like some people, they will do sort of like lots of tiny little lines, and that looks cool as well. But I'm quite enjoying sort of like the chisel work of quite a few carvers, and they tend to do quite kind of chunky kind of carvings with really deep sort of like gouges in like this. And I kind of think it looks a little bit more sculptural and a little bit more solid, if you get what I mean. And what I tend to do is up near the nose, I will try and make the lines a little bit more narrow. And what you can do is, what I've done here is I have moved down to a smaller burr, and I might put in a few extra lines here. And so it kind of looks like lots of little lines going into big valleys. I don't know how else to describe it really, to be honest. And so we have moved over to a T-shaped burr, and what I quite like about these is you can sort of use them up for tidying up the mustache. You can actually carve the valleys with them as well. So I'm sort of like using the top of that burr sort of just to go along the planes of the mustache hairs, and I also might use the edge to go a little bit deeper as well. And if you've got one of these little disc sanders, you can use that as well. It's sort of kind of similar, but it's actually quite difficult because it's so big, but it is actually quite good to sort of like do a quick once over with it. It sort of like takes off all of the rough patches, just sort of like lightly touch the areas. You can do a bit of shaping on the contours there if you wanted to. So I'm trying to get that kind of roundness going down there. This wood is a little bit fuzzy. It's not too bad, but in sort of like places you can sort of see there it's a little bit scuffed up and all of that kind of stuff. But generally this wood is actually pretty good. And I often get asked what kind of woods are really good for carving. And it's really hard to answer that because everywhere in the world has different kinds of woods. And so I'm carving in macrocarpa here, which is originally actually from California. But it's sort of got the similar properties of maybe like basswood. It's quite soft. I wouldn't say it's as soft as basswood, but it sort of like holds the detail relatively well. And when you're first starting to carve, you don't really want the hardwoods. If it was up to me, I'd love to carve in black walnut all the time. It would be very hard on the burrs, but it's just such a beautiful wood. But like what you can do with this, and what you'll see me at the end, is I'll stain it darker because I actually really like the darker woods. Let me know in the comments what your favourite wood to carve is, and if that's local to you as well. Yeah, so, you know, to be honest, I'd love to be carving those big logs of cedar and all of that kind of stuff. I have got a chainsaw, and I have actually got a couple of logs of cedar, but I don't think it's very good cedar. But maybe this summer I will bring out the chainsaw and have a go at one of these carvings on a bigger scale. Okay, so I've just put in a few more S-bends for the beard, and I've gone in straight for the inverted cone burr here. Now, I'm not saying that you could do this, or maybe you could. It all depends on the hardness of the wood, whether you go in with a cutter burr or a diamond burr first. So I'm just putting in these. You can see it's slowly, a little bit of burning there. It's going pretty hard out. The other option is to go in lightly and then just sort of like keep on working it until those valleys get deeper and deeper. So I'm going in on the other angle to sort of like increase the size of that valley. And we will go in with the T-shaped burr as well. You'll see that very shortly, just to tidy things up. And this is the T-shaped burr, so you can sort of see me just going in and tidying up those lines that I did with the inverted cone burr, and maybe going a little bit deeper with it as well. It seems to have a little bit more control around the corners. And I've put it on one of the biggest T-shaped burrs that I've got, and you can sort of see I'm using the edge to go sort of like deep in between the cheek and the mustache. And then what I will do is, because that'll leave the flat part on the cheek, I will try and round that off with actually well, I could use any burr, but I've decided to use sort of like the flat plane of the top of that burr. And one area that is quite difficult on the mustache is sort of like that area under the nose and into the mustache. It's sort of, you want to try and get a sort of like a definitive line under that. So I tend to use kind of really small burrs and sort of go quite hard into the wood. It's a bit of a difficult one, that area, and sometimes it doesn't actually really even show up afterwards, because I tend to add quite dark waxes onto this, so it'll sort of like hide that anyway within the wax. So don't worry about that too much. And I'm using a Dremel cutter burr there, just a sphere one, and I'll sometimes like turn it upside down to do those nostril holes. Just make sure you're kind of happy with how the nose is before you start putting these in. And they're kind of oval, not round. Sometimes they turn out to be round, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference. And in the next video, we are going to be working on the tiny little details that kind of like make the sculpture come to life, sort of like the pupils, like wrinkles on the face. We're going to add a skull cap like this one here. Just these tiny little things, and we'll finish it off with a nice stain and a wood dye, I think. So watch out for that video coming out very shortly. Hopefully it'll be this week. Should be. This is only Monday here in New Zealand. So we will see you soon.